Bitcoin has been growing with about 60 to 70% every single year the last 10 years on average. Now, if you're doing only 40% the next 10 years, we will be reaching price targets north of $1 million, even $2 million within 10 years are possible. And here's the fun part that a lot of people now overlook. As of this recording, we are at 65,000 US dollars Bitcoin price. This is down 50% from the all-time high just a couple of months ago. So if you are thinking about the CAGR calculation going forward, having a 50% lower entry price will double your future return. Also, Jim, our guest today, has amazing stories about the inflation that he lived through, some amazing personal stories why he's so grateful to be stacking at those low Bitcoin prices, and what learnings he had from living through the internet revolution now into the Bitcoin revolution. Enjoy. We last time talked about what the potential for Bitcoin is. We went into the CAGR calculation because I think people cannot really comprehend exponential growth. And I just told you before we started recording, all of those things we said last time are now twice as valuable because the price is like 40, 50, 35, whatever the percentage is, down from last time. So it's amazing to speak to you at not an all-time high, but at a bear market or at a crash or a tip, or like however you want to kind of call it.
I've never been more excited. This rabbit hole just keeps going further and further. And the price is really just a big distraction right now, Robin, in this early stage of the adoption of this technology. And from the years being in the telecom industry for 25 years and watching the invention of the cell phone, for instance, and everything that was built on top of that technology and where we're at today, we're talking from around the world and I'm using my phone. This is kind of where we're at. We're at the basic, if I could give you an analogy, compare it to where we're at in the telecom industry. In the early days, we had these big Motorola brick phones and they were huge phones and they were like $3,000 and they didn't really do anything. They were analog. They could only make a phone call, store like 10 numbers. You couldn't do anything with it. And that was the base layer that we built off of. Motorola was a big pioneer in those days. And so and I got in the industry back then. So I watched an entire industry grow from that to where we are today, and everything that was built on top of cell phones. Now it basically has become like, I like to think of a cell phone as like an organ that we carry around with us. It's like your kidney or your heart, it's like you leave home without it. You're like, oh no. So you get lost real quick without it. Now it's become part of our lives. And I think that a lot of these technologies that are being built today using blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies it's the same thing's going to happen. I see it happening. I see the same parallels happening. So it's a great time to be in this space and to get in this space and to learn about these technologies and what they're going to do. And there's so many exciting things that's happened since we spoke last time. It was in the summer in 2025. I was actually in Europe then. Oh, and by the way, I did get to visit your wonderful country. I'm sorry I didn't get to meet up with you, but we did make it over there to Austria, and it was absolutely beautiful. Congratulations. You guys have a really nice country over there. I'd like to make another visit there. So hopefully we can do that and meet up one day. But back to where we're at with this, we're at that early level, like I said, with the Motorola brick phones, things that are going to be built on top of the Bitcoin blockchain, especially. We haven't even barely scratched the surface with this. And this data, this Bitcoin's blockchain is nothing more to me than very precious data. And, the world's most secure database, it's going to be built on. And some of the things that I've seen lately has really sent goosebumps up my spine. And it just makes me want more of this precious data. So again, the price is a distraction right now. Hey, congratulations. We got a 50% off sale going on the world's most precious data. And, people love to run out. I say this all the time. They love to run out and buy things on sale. And I do too. For instance, I just had a 50% off on my shoes, and I had to buy 3 pairs to get this 50% off. So the first thing I thought was, okay, what's going on? Is my foot size going to change? Is anything changing here? can I buy these 3 pair, right? And that's how I kind of look at Bitcoin is when the price drops like this compared to the dollar, I just look, did anything happen? Is anything changing? What's going on here? No, everything's fine. Everything's intact. And to me, this is nothing more than a sale. So I step up and I buy as much as I possibly can. I've been in this rodeo now, Robin, for almost 9 years. June 2nd of this year will be 9 years that I got into this rodeo. And I've been dollar cost averaging for 9 years. So when people look at me and say, well, what do you think about the price? The price is down. I feel sorry for you. And I just look at them and I say, I just had this conversation, by the way, over dinner the other night. And I just explained to them that because I've been dollar cost averaging for 9 years, I am so far in the green that I'm perfectly good with this. And for me, this is just a sale, and I'm using this to acquire more of this precious data. And I'd like to get into the reasons why I'm even more excited than ever before about this data and things that are going to be built on top of it, I don't know if you've heard, I'll go right into it, but I don't know if you've heard about these Claude bots that have started. Have you heard of Claude bots?
Yeah, of course, the cloud bots. They're actually coming. The founder Peter Steinberger is actually right around where I was born in Austria, Upper Austria. So it really hit home for me, and I think he now joined OpenAI and tries to bring that to ChatGPT. So yeah, like cloud bots, it's tremendous. I haven't tinkered around with it too much, but like it's been all over my news. And I talk with so many people now about it because it's like you cannot not talk about it.
Well, let me give you an analogy and compare it to something, technology, back to the cell phones again. So in the early days of the cell phones, we had pagers as well. And so I kind of think of the Claude bots as pagers, right? And they were separate. Your cell phone and your pagers were completely separate from each other in the beginning. So, but then they merged together. That all of a sudden the cell phone could work. The cell phone could also text, right? They merged the technologies together. And I think the same thing, and this is why I had such an exciting conversation with a friend of mine out here the other day, Don. We talked about this in length, and I said, look, these Claude bots, they're going to use a currency. They're going to need currency. They're going to need some form of money to exchange between themselves. And what layer are they going to build on? And in my opinion, they're going to be using the hardest sound money on the planet. They can't use the existing financial rails. They can't use JP Morgan Chase and send wire transfers and Zelle and ask for permission to send money. This data has to move at the speed of energy, and the money has to move at the speed of energy. So these Claude bots are probably going to evolve into using the Lightning Network, for instance, where they can move around Bitcoin, the hardest sound money on the planet, at real-time speed. They can't operate on the old set of rails. So of course this is going to happen. And it's so exciting to know that the use cases of this critical data isn't just going to be for the hardest sound money on the planet in a store of value, but this stuff's going to be built on, and we're going to use this all around the world. Another thing that even excites me more than the Claude bots, Robin, is we've got AI, we've got AGI, and we've got super intelligence probably just a few years away. And these AIs are going to help develop AGI. AGI is going to help us get to super intelligence. And again, all these technologies are going to need a form of currency that they can move around at the speed of, the speed of the internet, the speed of light, basically. Just move this stuff around very quickly without toll collectors, without people in the middle, without people slowing these transactions down. And this is going to happen. But it also brings up another critical layer that's going to be needed, is that these systems are going to be vulnerable to superintelligence, to AGI and AI technology to keep the bad actors out. So they're going to need a database that can be used that provides a proof of work technology like Bitcoin to protect the databases of the world's critical data. So I've kind of came up with a new phrase that I've been telling people. I think that Bitcoin's blockchain and their critical data is going to become the world's master lock. So everybody, banks and governments around the world, companies, they're going to need a way to protect themselves from these technologies. And this isn't even getting into quantum computing yet, but and that's coming a ways down the road. And we can discuss that, since it's been a kind of a black eye lately on Bitcoin, as people are scared of quantum, and I have no fear of it at all, and I can explain that. But again, this blockchain, imagine the use case of this and the value of this precious data, Robin, if and when it becomes a master lock for the world's critical data. The numbers would probably go into somewhere with Peter Dunworth's predictions, which I won't even say, but he's probably had the highest predictions of the Bitcoin price in the world. And I don't know if it's going to go to his highest extremes, but I do think that if this happens, and it's likely to happen, I can't see a better technology out there for these companies to use, except for proof of work, which requires energy to attack their system and cost money. And proof of work gives that to them. It gives them protection. So again, I think that this is going to occur, and we're going to see this probably starting. My best guess, we're going to start seeing this. We're going to see the cloud bots probably using Bitcoin for transactions and whatnot first, and we're also going to see probably within the next couple of years systems having to protect themselves, and they're going to choose, I believe, the best network in the world with the most secure data, and that's Bitcoin's blockchain.
And you bring up an interesting point, because I think every technology measured, like if you have base money that is fixed, that you cannot manipulate, you cannot widen, and it's not inflationary, or it's as Bitcoin is disinflationary or deflationary, you have all technologies that come on top of that, and they all bring prices down. So if we now have the base money as Bitcoin, and you adopt yourself a Bitcoin standard, if AI comes and brings a lot of productivity and efficiency to the market, this means the prices are coming down measured in Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin will also go up, not just because of technology bringing prices down, just because Bitcoin also gets adopted. But imagine Bitcoin is already mass adopted. Every technology that comes to humanity brings then the prices down, measured in Bitcoin, because it makes us more efficient and more productive. And then Bitcoin is kind of rising, or all the prices measured in Bitcoin are falling, however you want to look at it. And so this is really interesting how technology, AI, and in general, like everything that is happening on top of the technology layer is kind of having an impact on Bitcoin, which I find fascinating. And on top of that, it gets adopted rather quickly.
Robin, I like to try to stick to Bitcoin, but it all ties in, I think, together. And you made a lot of valid points there that I've been laying awake at night thinking about the future, because again, as someone who's retired, I want to make sure that I can protect my my retirement, my nest egg, and make sure that I have my chips pushed in the right locations to be able to continue to grow my personal wealth over time as I get older. So you mentioned, and I'll get into this, we talked about cloud bots, right? Well, there's also real bots coming, humanoid robots that are coming. And I think that the same thing's going to happen with these humanoid robots. And some people who aren't familiar with what's actually happening, this is really happening. They're, just start researching humanoid robots, and you'll see that these things are amazing. The technology is incredible, and this is going to happen and drive those prices down, like you were talking about. But I also think that these humanoid robots are going to also they're going to be connected likely to each other through some form of communication. And I think they're also going to need some form of digital currency that they use. And they're not going to be writing out checks to each other. They're not going to be zelling each other. That's just technology that just won't work with these technologies. So they'll have to use a form of superior currency, and they're going to use cryptocurrency, blockchain technology. And I believe that the winner there is going to be Bitcoin for this use case. So yeah, there's so many exciting things. It's hard to imagine. And you mentioned the prices of goods and of stuff coming down, goods and services. And I do believe that these technologies are going to bring down the cost of goods and services. It's pretty much a given. But what's not going to happen is it's not likely to bring down, at least not anytime soon, the cost of certain things like hard assets. So I think that because if here's in my opinion, if we produce and bring down the cost of goods and services using these technologies, what's likely to happen is we'll get food costs coming down, we'll get labor costs coming down. You know, maybe you'll get your hair cut by a robot one day, you'll get your dental work done. Who knows? So yeah, obviously the prices would come down if you remove the human out of the equation, and that's going to give the governments around the world the ability to print more money because now inflation's coming down. But what's likely to happen, in my opinion, at least, you know, in the short to medium term, is asset prices are going to continue to rise over time. So I think that certain things are going to continue to go up because they're going to keep printing money, Robin. And I wrote a book, Robin, 500 pages long, and the first page says 3 words: they're going to print, and the other 499 pages are left blank. And in my opinion, that's all that people really need to know, is that they're going to print. They're just not going to stop printing. I say there used to be 2 things we used to say was sure: death and taxes. I'm adding death, taxes, and they're going to print. They're not going to stop printing this. They're not going to stop printing fiat currencies around the world. They're going to print this stuff, and as long as they keep printing, prices are going to continue to rise until we have another technology that brings prices down. And I believe that's also coming. So we're in a transition period here, which is really exciting to be in. It does make things a little bit blurry going forward, but that's often the case with the future. We have to try to predict what's going to happen. And I think that whatever happens, Bitcoin is here, it's going to stay, and it's going to become very valuable.
You spoke about data. It reminded me about the softer thesis of Jason Lowry, where we have to protect things with Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is kind of not only a money, but also actually protecting data, or protecting us from, if you think about everything can be manipulated or copied by AI, the one thing that is not being able to be copied by AI is Bitcoin itself, because this is the only thing that AI cannot replicate. They can replicate me, they can replicate like basically everything that is moving around on our earth, and can make more of, but Bitcoin is the only thing they cannot really do. And so is that the thing where you also think about data and the security of it with the softer thesis? Was this the thing that you were kind of pointing towards?
Absolutely. And the reason is very simple, Robin. Bitcoin requires proof of work. So if these AI bots and anybody wants to attack the Bitcoin blockchain, they have to spend real energy to do that. That costs them money. Where with these AI and AGI and superintelligence, if we don't have a way to protect our critical data in the world, these things can sit there and attack it at pretty much a zero cost. AI bots could send out millions of emails all over the world practically for free. It essentially is free. So if we don't have a way to protect our systems from these technologies, then of course we're in trouble. So they're going to need a system to do that, and they're going to need a system that costs money to attack. And that's Bitcoin. That's proof of work. That's what it's all about. They actually have to do something. They have to use energy to attack the system, and that costs money. So imagine if it costs a penny or 5 cents to send out an email. Well, these bots aren't likely to go sending millions of emails out every day because it costs money. It's very simple concept in that respect, although the technology is very complicated. One thing I'll say about technology and having a background in it is that every problem that I've seen arise in the telecom industry, for instance, in the early days, people were cloning phones. They were putting 2 phones on one number and stealing somebody else's line and running up these huge phone bills. And they finally fixed it. They came out with something called the fingerprint system that was actually able to fingerprint the digital ID of the device calling, and it would recognize that it's not the same device. So what we did was we used technology to solve a technological problem, right? And that's what the same thing's going to happen here. We're going to use technology to protect ourselves against every form of technology that exists. the stink on the street right now is this quantum computing, and its threat against Bitcoin's blockchain. And it's just, I have zero worry about that at all. It doesn't even, I just sit back and just think, well, these people are worried about it just because they don't understand technology like I do. And fortunately, I have a background in it and I understand it. And I rode that wave, and I watched how technology worked, and I learned technology, and I got into it. And I was actually doing some pretty technical things in my days in the telecom industry. So anybody out there that's thinking that Bitcoin's blockchain is going to be hacked by quantum computing, no, it isn't. It's just simple. All it is a software update. That's all that needs to happen for Bitcoin's blockchain to become quantum proof. If Bitcoin's blockchain was able to be hacked, if SHA-256 encryption, and that's what Bitcoin runs on, if this blockchain was able to be hacked, everything in the world would be able to be hacked. And the last thing you'd be worrying about is Bitcoin. Every banking system, every financial instrument in the world, nuclear launch codes, everything would be able to be compromised with these technologies that are coming, especially superintelligence. That's a whole other can of worms that we haven't even got to yet. But so if we can cause a problem with technology, we can use that same technology to find a solution to fix it. And that's what's always happened with technology. Every time there's a problem, they have a solution to fix it. We're fortunate enough to have a smart car, and every time it has a problem, we can get an update to fix the problem. So again, every update, it fixes problems. It gets better and better and better over time. And that's just how technology works, Robin. It's happened in the cell phone industry for years. Whenever phones were having problems, they would just write a new software update, fix the problem, and we moved forward. They're going to have to be ahead of the curve with quantum, and they will. They've got plenty of time to work on this. And that's still probably a good decade away before we have any real worries about quantum computing. So I like to think 10 years out, but I'm not going to worry at all about quantum computing. I know that problem's going to be resolved.
Yeah, I also look at the same way. Quantum computing, if it's a substantial existential threat to Bitcoin, we will deal with it. And there's already great solutions for it. It's not like there's nothing to be done. There's no solutions there. There's already multiple solutions actually for quantum computers. We just have to implement it. And also, I don't think we should fix something that is not yet a problem. And so people say like, oh, why don't we do it now and all of that? Like we should not fix things that are not broken yet and are like 5-10 years down the line. Like everyone that I talk to that has a lot of knowledge around quantum computing, they say it's at least 5 years and more likely 10 to 15 years that it actually becomes a threat. So why fix a thing that is not broken yet?
Well, Robin, those are words I live by. I grew up with a wrench in my hand, and one thing I learned early in life is don't fix what ain't broken. I'm not going to go out and tear the transmission out of my car and fix it when there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't make good sense, right? I did some of that in my life. I fixed what wasn't broken, and it's like, ouch. You go to School of Hard Knocks and you realize, don't do that. Don't fix it isn't broken. Great wisdom there, Robin. I totally agree with you on that.
I want to come back to the telecom comparison because I think it's very interesting to see like where the internet kind of progressed and where we are with Bitcoin also now. And I think it's also the most relatable comparison towards Bitcoin because most people have an understanding what the internet is and what it has gone through. I mean, most people that listen to this probably actually have gone through the internet revolution in like 1990, 1980, 2000, and the dot-com bubble and all of that, and then the iPhone moment. And I want to kind of get a sense of how you think where we are in this comparison, and also what you might speculate on where this iPhone moment comes into place, where it's so abundantly clear that everyone uses Bitcoin, and how this might shake up with your experience in the telecom industry. The most effective way to buy Bitcoin is to DCA, dollar cost average, or ECA, euro cost average, into your Bitcoin position long term with the Relai app. It's the consistency of buying every day, every week, every month that compounds and really builds the position that you want to have in Bitcoin. And for that, I'm using Relai. Relai is Bitcoin only. They do not do any shit coins. They do not do any cryptos, any stocks, or anything else. This is a tool, an app, the biggest one in Europe, that is fully focused only and solely on Bitcoin. Relai is also self-custodial. So from the first second onwards, where you buy the Bitcoin on Relai, they are in your self-custodial control. They never have the keys to your Bitcoin. No freezing of your assets, no counterparty risk, no rug pulling whatsoever. And honestly, it's the simplest app that I've ever used in the whole Bitcoin ecosystem. Super easy to set up and super easy to buy your Bitcoin consistently. So set up your DCA with code Robin on the Relai app today. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Finally, we have BTC Prague back in 2026, and this year I'm not only speaking on a panel, but I'm actually going to present an interesting new angle, a perspective, a Bitcoin thesis at BTC Prague this year for the first time ever. I've never done that on any other conference, so this will be a fun one. If you listen to this show on a regular basis, I would love to meet you in Prague this year. It's very high signal, no noise, and Prague is just a freaking amazing city with awesome drinks and a lot of good food. Use code Robin to get 10% off, and if you buy with Bitcoin, you get an additional 5% off your ticket price. I'll see you there in Prague. Make sure to come say hi.
Well, as far as where I think we're at, comparing it to the telecommunications business, like I said earlier, I still think we're at the Motorola brick phone technology right now. We're at the very early stages of this. And, we haven't even really built anything on the Bitcoin blockchain yet. They played around with, NFTs and stuff. But again, we haven't really built anything on this yet, except for a store of value, which it's done amazingly well. And anything that's finite, and has a fixed supply, obviously, as the use case grows for it, and we get more and more people using it for different things, building on it, of course, that block space, that data is going to become so valuable. It sends chills up my spine. I mean, I'm probably more excited today about Bitcoin than I was, last year when we spoke, or five years ago, Robin. I know what's coming, and when you can see the future and you know what's coming, you can push your chips in on that, and you can go, wow, this is going to be a great ride. Unfortunately, a lot of people today are valuing Bitcoin as they want more dollars. They accumulate Bitcoin because they want more dollars. And I was having this discussion again at dinner the other night with a friend, and when I told him this, he looked very confused. But I said, I don't acquire Bitcoin to get more dollars. I want more Bitcoin. So when the price goes down against the dollar, I can actually get more Bitcoin. I have no intentions of really ever selling Bitcoin. It's just going to be too darn valuable. And again, like we've talked about before, is there's going to be plenty of ways to tap into that and leverage that over time. I don't think that time is today. I know there's companies out there offering leverage on it and stuff, but yeah, I think that there's going to be a better time and place for that, and I just don't think it's here yet. It's coming, and I certainly think that before anybody or myself, if before I ever was going to leverage this, I would want something that's probably more in the millions of dollars per coin, and I think that's probably not too far into the future. I think once this thing hits and once this data is starting to be used for things like protecting the world's data and for the internet to move money around at the speed of electricity, basically, this thing's just going to rise, and I think it's going to rise violently quick and violently fast, and we could have some of those God candles that Samsung now talks about, where you wake up and Bitcoin's gone up, by $100,000 in comparison, in just a matter of a day or two. I think that is likely to happen, and it's not like it's 20 years away. I watched how fast the mobile networks were built on top of, and all the things that they put on top of them, and how fast that technology took off. And I got into it in 1991. I got into the telecom industry, and there was about a 4% market penetration in the technology at that time. And if you really look at Bitcoin's global adoption rate, it isn't even much past that now. So we're so early. I know it doesn't move as fast as everybody wants it to move, but when it does move, it moves fast and it moves hard. It's still the best performing asset, even with this pullback in the history of humanity. Nothing's performed this. Bitcoin's up millions of percent. I mean, so to have a 50% pullback, again, I view it as, don't run out of the store screaming that the hardest money on the planet is for sale. Run in while everybody else is running out. You almost have to do, Robin, what your opposite of your emotions are telling you. I always tell people, don't make business decisions based on emotion, because you'll get wrecked. So when you feel like when you feel like throwing up because the price is so far down, that's the signal to me. Like, that's the time to buy, for me. And when I feel like, and I do get nauseated sometimes, because you watch this enormous amount of wealth disappear off your portfolio compared to dollars. And, I open my book and I just go, what's wrong? Oh, nothing. They're going to print. And I use those 3 words, every time I have any doubts about anything. And I know, because they're going to print more of these dollars, it's going to take more of these dollars to buy Bitcoin over time. And yes, it's a volatile technology, and that's what happens with technology over time. It's very volatile, especially in the early phases of technology. It's a roller coaster ride, and Bitcoin is a roller coaster, but it's a roller coaster that keeps gaining altitude. And there's nothing wrong, nothing happened, nothing broke. It's just we had more sellers at the current time than buyers. And for everybody who's selling a Bitcoin, somebody's buying a Bitcoin. So just keep that in mind, that, it's not like anybody's not buying. There's just a flood of people selling, and it's like anything else. If you have a flood of people selling at a current time, then the price is going to go down. You don't have enough buyers at the current time, but it'll turn around like it always does. And we'll be hitting new all-time highs again, Robin, and hopefully we'll have another podcast together when that's happening.
I 100% believe so. And I think one thing that people also have a hard time understanding, because our brain doesn't function that way, is exponential growth. And this is actually something, CAGR, or the compound annual growth rate, is something that people have a hard time understanding, why Bitcoin moves in exponentials and what this actually means of the God candle. Because if you have linear growth, a God candle is very hard to understand, this 100K per day. Now we are not even at 100K Bitcoin price. And now when someone comes in and wants to learn about Bitcoin, and he hears a Bitcoiner talking about we going up $100,000 in one day, it seems like ridiculous, because we're not even now at 100K and it has been here for 16 years. How can you go in just one day the same amount up? But I think exponential growth is the underlying thing that people kind of not understand. And if I remember correctly, you had amazing examples for CAGR and exponential growth last time.
Yeah, I did. And one thing I learned about whenever you do compound annual growth rates, just double, triple, quadruple check your math. And even if you're using AI, I've learned you really got to dig in hard, to some of these numbers. And sometimes these numbers are so mind bending that it's like, okay, let me try to do this. Okay, let me do it. Let me send it through here. Let me check it here. So I think that these we all want to know where Bitcoin's going. For me, last summer when I was on this podcast with you, I mentioned that had been returning us 65% compound annual growth rate since we've been in it. Of course, if I remeasure these numbers today, it's not going to be as high. Now, the good news is I have more Bitcoin than I had before. So the next time when Bitcoin's hitting higher highs, and believe me, the compound annual growth rate now, if I had to give it my best estimate on my particular time in Bitcoin, is probably more like 45% right now, which is still staggering and amazing. So if we want to talk about compound annual growth rates, Robin, a little bit, I think that over the next decade, the compound annual growth rates will slow down, but still, I think if I had to give it my best guess, we're going to probably still see a 40% compound annual growth rate going forward for the next decade. And when you start extrapolating that out with any amount of money, it grows very fast and very quick. And, I think that, again, this is a long-term play here. This isn't, as I said on my last podcast, Bitcoin's not get rich quick. It's a get rich slow play, and you got to put in your time. Anybody who's jumping in with the rent money or mortgage money and saying, "Oh, I'm just going to put it in here because I know it's going to double over the next 30 days," no, that's not a good idea. Please don't do that kind of stuff. I like to dollar cost average, Robin, because I think that's how I'm able to get the compound annual growth rates that I'm getting. I just continue to dollar cost average. So, did I buy Bitcoin at 126,000? Absolutely, I did. And I'm not buying whole coins anymore. I don't have that kind of liquidity laying around. I don't save dollars. And so, but because I'm buying on a weekly basis and I'm smash buying when I can clearly see we're in a good pullback, that's all I need to do. I don't trade. I don't think that's something that the average Joe out there should be doing, is trying to trade this thing. I think that if you want to build wealth, it takes time. I don't think there's any shortcuts to it. And I think that we're in a place now, Robin, where even when I was a younger man, I thought it seems like the world's become a place where it's become survival of the fittest. And I'd say when I was about 28 years old, that's when it kind of dawned on me that, wow, I'm on my own here. And, I've got to build my own future. And I can't rely on anybody else. Nobody's going to save me. I've got to get out there and do this myself. And I think for people that are working and putting in their time right now and not retired, they've got to do something. If they're just spinning their wheels on a hamster wheel, that's all that's going to continue to happen. You've got to have some kind of a plan, whatever that is. If Bitcoin ain't your plan, then find another plan. But do some research. Find a way to build a future for yourself, because it is survival of the fittest, in my opinion, Rob. And that's the world that we're living in. That's the only way I see it.
Yeah, it's you have to. I made a tweet a few days ago saying you have to protect your freedom with Bitcoin and your income with skills and knowledge. If you do those two things, you will be very fine. So you have to keep educating yourself. You have to keep learning new stuff. If there's an AI thing going on, learn about the AI thing. Learn about like what a cloud bot is. Not because you will be rich learning from a cloud bot, but maybe you can use that knowledge in whatever you do. And maybe down the line, it's a big thing. And so I think protecting your freedom with Bitcoin and protecting your wealth with Bitcoin, but then also protecting your income with skills and knowledge is a big thing. I've made that in the past. I'm really big on having an open mind and learning as much as you can. It's probably the biggest shortcut I took so far in my life, learning from other people and listening and shutting up when they are speaking. I don't have a long life yet, but so far this has been the biggest shortcut for me.
I tell people all the time, I told my son this many years ago, and we still joke about it today. But I kind of look back at my childhood and my life because it's all I can really reflect on, right? And I look and I see that life, as I told him one day, it's like when you're born, you're a brand new pencil. Let's just use pencil. And as you go through life, you get sharpened, and it just sharpens you down. It doesn't matter who you are. Even aging sharpens you down. Things that happen in life sharpen you down. When bad things happen to you, you get sharpened in life, and you get shorter in a sense. So, that's just part of life, and it's tough. I don't think any amount of money really, changes that. I mean, sure, money can help make life better in a lot of ways. It can help buy better medicine and give you comforts in life, and it's very important, especially as you get older and you get more sharpened. Like me, I've been sharpened pretty hard in my life, Robin. Ever since I was a young guy, I got sharpened pretty hard, and I've been through things that a lot of people can't even imagine, and it's we all go through things. Everybody has their story. And
I wanted to come back maybe as a segue back to Bitcoin, to the exponential growth. I always bring that example up, and I always have to ask AI again. I have to ask for the numbers because they seem so absurd with exponential growth. And the example is filling up a football stadium full of water. And you just drop one drop in the first minute, and then 2 drops in the second, and then 4 drops in the third minute, and so on. And this is my favorite example when I explain to people how fast exponential growth actually happens and how violently it is in the last couple of minutes. And so when you make this example, in the first 53 minutes, it's not even at 1%. So we are in that specific example, we had around 0.7% at minute 53. And in the last 7 minutes, we're going from 1% to 100%. And this is already amazing and crazy to think about. But the craziest thing for me is we're going in the last 2 minutes 75% up. So from minute 58, we have filled 25%, and we used 58 minutes to fill up 25%, and now in 2 more minutes we're filling up the remaining 75%. I don't know if it's a good example, but I absolutely love it because it shows how violent exponential growth is on the back half of it. The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC-free Bitcoin. That's why I use Simple Mining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together.
One thing I like to look at for exponential growth is if you take a piece of paper, there's the thickness of a Bible paper, and you supposedly, if you were able to fold that over on itself, I can't remember the exact number of times, like 30 times or something, and you were able to stack that up, you'd hit the moon. I mean, it's And I kind of looked into that, and I can't exactly remember the amount of folds that it takes, but the last few, are exponential. I mean, it just explodes and it reaches the moon by folding that paper a number of times. So, yeah, exponential growth is something that most people just can't even imagine. I kind of seen it in the telecom business. It just exploded in growth. It was stagnant. It was like 3%, 4%, 5%, and then it just exploded. And next thing I knew, everybody had a cell phone. It was a good business. It was a good time. I was happy I was able to ride that exponential growth.
Yeah, it's when the industry, and by the way, it's 42 folds. I remember
Okay.
this example also, and I looked it up. It's 42 folds. If you could do this because I think 7 folds is kind of the maximum you can do with paper. If you fold a paper more than 7 times, you cannot really do it the 8th time because it's like it gets weird. But if you could do it, you could fold it like 42 times, and then you're like reaching the moon, which is crazy because it's like, yeah, you can fold it once and it's like it didn't get any thicker, like you don't see anything, and you like fold it 41 more times, you're like at the moon. Like how the heck does that work? So exponential growth is just like not reachable for the human mind, I think.
I'm sure that number varies depending on the thickness of the paper too. That would even make such a massive difference, right? Even just the thickness of paper. But again, yeah, the exponential growth is something that nobody's ready for, but we're going to see it in so many technologies coming over the next 5 years. The world's going to look massively different. We've got companies solving things like autonomy. This is amazing what's happening. We got self-driving cars out there. What's about to happen is hard to imagine. I can see a day when even your car is using Bitcoin through the Lightning Network or cryptocurrency technologies blockchain to pay for tolls and stuff. You just run up to the tolls and your car's paying people. It's ordering your food. It's it's all going to be tied together. And so we're kind of in a fourth industrial revolution right now. If you're sitting on the sidelines right now and you haven't been wanting to buy Bitcoin, and you're thinking it's going to drop further, well, it could. For myself, I'm always buying, so it seems to work the best for me just to keep dollar cost averaging. And I was speaking with many people over the last couple of weeks because of the price of Bitcoin dropping, and the same people that were sitting on the sidelines when it was too expensive, is now sitting on the sidelines again because they think it's going to go lower and it's going to go lower. And get off of zero, as I tell people. Just get off zero. If you're sitting on that, that's a number that's definitely not going to compound in any way. Zero, you can compound by 1,000,000%, and you still got zero. So just have a long-term outlook on this thing. And I like the dollar cost average. So it's not financial advice to anybody out there. Do your own homework. Learn about this technology. It's amazing and it's fascinating. And it's not, I kind of think of technology, some people pick up on it and some people are afraid of it. But, you don't have to know how your TV works, right, Robin? You don't have to know how all the transistors and resistors, capacitors, and everything work inside of a television. You just got to learn how to use the remote. And the cell phone now is the remote. It can take you to your accounts. You can use it to study with. You can learn how to use the remote, and you don't have to know how the inner workings of the Bitcoin blockchain actually work. But you should get some education on it before you start putting a dime into it, so you have an understanding about it.
I love that message because like no matter how much you put in there, no matter how crazy Bitcoin goes up, you don't have anything from it if you don't own it. It's like a very simple thing to do. And I also love your T-shirt for the few people that probably a lot of people that watch only the audio. It says "to the mouth" and the O of the "do" is a Bitcoin. And I think it's a great thing of like if you understand what Bitcoin is and you understand what the future of Bitcoin brings, you just do the math on like what it will bring to your life and your financial life also, especially because like we always feel weird when we talk about the price, but at the end of the day, we all came into because of the price. It's like we all came into because we want to have a higher Bitcoin price, right?
It's funny because I was talking to somebody the other day, and they of course, I religiously wear a Bitcoin shirt almost every day. I just love it. It's really been an enhancement in my life. Even with the price down, I'm out there wearing it, and maybe people think I'm crazy for wearing it when the price is down. But I'm not in this to get more dollars. I'm in this to get more Bitcoin. And when you thoroughly understand it, in that respect, you realize you're not chasing more dollars. You're chasing more Bitcoin. When people tell me they can't afford Bitcoin, I tell them I can't afford dollars. I mean, I can't afford dollars, Robin. They lose purchasing power. They've done that perfectly. I mean, it's guaranteed. A quick thing about inflation, because I just had, and I get inflation lessons too still. If people think Bitcoin is volatile, well, you should go buy coffee cake at the coffee house I go to. It's very volatile. The last time that we were in there, we bought a coffee cake. They cut it in half now, literally. They sliced it. It used to be 1 inch thick. It's now a ½ inch thick. And it's the same price. So my coffee cake went up 100%. And it's like, Bitcoin isn't the only thing that's volatile. I mean, these inflation levels aren't stopping. We went out for ice cream the other day at Ben and Jerry's ice cream here in Palm Springs. And Robin, I talked about ice cream on, I think, an earlier podcast with you, because again, it was my first bout with inflation in 1974. I watched my ice cream go from 5 cents to 10 cents, a Thrifty's ice cream cone. And that's when I thought, what is this? Why is this costing more? But I think that I've got to update my ice cream predictions analogies here, because I almost fell over. I still get shocked by the inflation. We bought 4 ice creams, actually 5 technically, but 4 cones at a Ben and Jerry's the other day. It was $40, Robin. Think about that. And that didn't include the tip. When I was a kid, we didn't give tips. There was no tip on the ice cream. So $40 without the tip for 5 scoops of ice cream. Now, my math says that's $8 a scoop. So I started thinking, $8, wow, that's absolutely insane. And I said, wait a minute. When I was a kid in 1974, 5 cents, how many scoops could I have bought for $8? Robin, think about that.
That is amazing. Like the amount, and I think this is what people don't get.
Yeah. So I did the math. Unless I'm the worst person in the world at math, $40, which is what we spent, you could have bought. Are you sitting down, Robin? Imagine this. $40. We got 5 scoops of ice cream. You could buy, when I was a kid, you could have bought 800 scoops of ice cream in a cone for $40. 800. I literally sat there in shock, and I was telling people at the table, and everybody thought I was kind of crazy, but I was sitting there in shock. Oh my gosh, we just spent $40 on 5 ice cream, and you could buy 800. That means you could have bought my whole school, my whole elementary school, everybody in my elementary school, an ice cream in a cone for $40. This isn't going to stop. I tell people, look, inflation has no top, and poverty has no bottom. And if you think this is going to stop, you're kidding yourself. The only hope we have right now that can bring down prices of goods and services is humanoid robots, in my opinion. That's about the only hope we have to get the cost of some bare essentials down, like food. And I got my fingers crossed that we can do that. At the same time, you create a massive amount of unemployment. So there's a lot of uncertainties going forward. But the one thing I am 100% certain of is, like my 500-page book says, is they're going to print, Robin. No matter what happens, they're going to continue to print these dollars, and there's going to be more and more of them in circulation over time. So find a way to protect yourself from the money printer, because again, I mentioned this before, a man with a money printer can steal your dreams. And that's that's an awful thing to have happen to you, is your life dreams. But I'm seeing it with all the decay in the society, and it's not getting any better. People's dreams are taking away their hope. They're getting desperate. They're working 2-3 jobs. They don't know how they're going to pay next month's bills. They're living paycheck to paycheck, and they're getting payday loans and all this stuff. This is horrible, absolutely terrible. It just causes so much destruction in a society. If you debase a country's currency, you debase a country's society, and that's absolutely what's happening, Robin.
And there's two things that I kind of want to address. Is like there is the official inflation rate, which I think is usually bogus. And then even if you take the official inflation rate, it's still horrible if you count that out. And I think inflation rate is more towards 7 than to 2%. And probably I would even go beyond 7. I would even go beyond 10%, because if you want to have anything nice in life, like nice restaurants, or like you want to travel the world, or you want to do anything good in life, those things usually accelerate in price a lot faster than the basic things. Like the banana will not grow as fast in the inflation rate than the nice scoop of ice cream around the corner at a good ice cream shop, or the home at a lake. Because this is also something we don't talk about. We all have to afford a home or a rent or something like that. Those go up a lot more, especially in nice locations, than the official inflation rate. And I did once the math on like how long it takes for the purchasing power to be cut in half at 7%. It's not even 10 years. And I'm like, wait, if we have 7% inflation, we get cut in half in not even 10 years. This is crazy.
Robin, go to my coffee shop. They cut it in half overnight. and you know, this is what I talked about also on a previous podcast, with the way that I try to explain money to people, that it's time, information, and energy. And the dollar is the same thing. It's a technology. And again, I've said this before, they use the technology, the government uses the technology to blur the information. That's where these unrealistic inflation numbers come from. They're 3%, inflation. Well, they take out all the critical things. They just blur the information. Whenever it isn't working, they just change things. And who cares if underwater arc welding rods, have only increased by 3% a year or something stupid. Again, we just need to get to true numbers, and we'll never get that with the government. So they're just going to continue to use that technology, blur the information, steal your energy, which is your economic energy, which we've spoken about before. They're going to keep stealing, and they're not going to stop. If you had a money printer, Robin, most people would keep printing money, and they have a money printer. And it's easier for these politicians that sit up there and act like they're doing the important things when really they're just backed by money printers. Imagine in your business, if you had a money printer, you wouldn't worry too much, would you? You'd give yourself a raise. You'd be protected from inflation. So the people that are closest to the money printer, Robin, it's not you and I, and it's not most people. And these politicians are just doing what is in their best interest at the end of the day, and they're not going to stop. So don't think you can rely on politicians to save you. You got to save yourself, Robin. Inflation is not going to stop anytime soon.
And I think this is also a good thought experiment. What if you actually had a money printer? What would you do? You would print as much money as possible. And so you should ask yourself, what will the central banks do? They will print as much money as humanly possible without losing the money printer. And that's why they have inflation targets, because they have to discipline themselves to not run it too hard, so they lose the money printer. Because if they run it too hard, at some point they will lose the money printer, because the money that comes out of it, nobody accepts anymore. But that's the end goal. Like, do you actually think that there's a point where humans just no longer accept money that is printed out of thin air and just like only accept hard money like Bitcoin?
Well, absolutely. I mean, money doesn't stop evolving. If we look back, at one time they thought shells were a good form of money, right? And they were trading shells. I mean, everything anything that has any kind of value between us can be used as money. Trade, I used to do a lot of trade for, in my business. We would trade with other companies. And so in a way, that was a form of money. So is money going to evolve? Is it always going to be this thing that can just be printed at will? No, I don't think so. As long as they have it, they'll continue to print. But one day, I think that money could just become the truest form of energy in the world. And I think that the best representation of that is Bitcoin. It is the truest form of energy in the world because it works on a proof of work technology. They can't just print it. And people that think that isn't backed by anything, they're absolutely wrong. It's backed by math, algorithm, the biggest decentralized computer network in the world, and energy. I mean, it's the truest form of money. So I think that money flows where it's treated best. And over time, it's going to continue to flow into the hardest money on the planet because people will wake up to this. Yes, there's other forms out there that have done well lately, like gold and silver and whatnot, but they're just not practical to use as money any longer, and they require trust. Bitcoin is a trustless system. It doesn't require any trust at all. It makes it different. So even if you want to invest in gold unless you want to hold the physical gold and you're buying paper derivatives of gold, you have to trust somebody actually has the gold. We tried that before, Robin. It doesn't work. So I won't be using gold as a form of money and then try to go out and spend it. They tried that. People would shave the gold off. They would just literally shave a little bit off every coin. And so, it's good for certain things, but I don't think it'll ever be used as money again in a consensus of the world. It just won't. It can't be. There's a better technology that doesn't need all that. It's far superior, in my opinion. And I know this might rub some gold bugs the wrong way. I'm not saying gold isn't a good thing. It is a good thing. It's certainly better, way better than holding dollars. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think once you do, as your T-shirt also says, do the math on like where gold is and where Bitcoin is. Like even if you just think that Bitcoin is, and this is actually a crazy thing we could also get into. When I first got into Bitcoin, the talks on the podcast were, okay, if Bitcoin catches up to gold, we had a Bitcoin price of, I don't know, 700,000, 600,000, something like that. Now, if Bitcoin catches up to gold, we are already at almost 2 million, like 1.7, 1.4, 1.5, like something like that. I think 1.85 was the last time I checked. And so it was really interesting for me to see, like even if Bitcoin just catches up to gold, the price moves up so fast because the debasement is so fast of the underlying asset that we measure it in. Because gold did not get better, like gold did not get more adopted in the last 5 years compared to the last like 50,000 years of history.
Robin, with that said, it's crazy that we have to measure the value of Bitcoin, the hardest money ever created in humanity, with the highest gains ever created. It's really weird how we're measuring the hardest money in the world against this fraudulent paper that's printed in a room. I mean, and created on a stroke of a keyboard. You can't create Bitcoin from stroking a keyboard. It has to be done through a complex mathematical equations that require energy to do and to solve. So it's the proof of work, and dollars don't need proof of work. In my opinion, it's just like it's a proof of weapons network, a proof of war network. It's just horrible. We've got to end this fiat currency stuff, because if we don't end it, it'll end us. We want world peace, but I think as long as we have fiat currency around, Robin, that's not possible. We keep using these dollars, we keep stealing the energy from people to build things that they don't want. I mean, if I came up to you, Robin, or a family, and I said, hey, look, is it okay if I steal some of your money to build nuclear weapons and weapons of mass destruction? What would you tell me? Or I said, hey, or you could choose B, I could build water parks and Ferris wheels, right? And positive things for humanity and fun things and better the world. Of course, where are you going to put your money, right? I think the reason we need these, weapons in the world and we have all this chaos is because of fiat currency. I think if we slowly get rid of it, we won't need weapons of mass destruction anymore, Robin. We really won't. I really believe that. And I think that humanity will repair itself and it will get better over time. We got to have hope, and I think Bitcoin gives us hope. It certainly gives me hope, but fiat currency doesn't give me any hope at all. I just see the destruction in my time on the planet. It's been horrific. I wish I had a time machine because I definitely wouldn't be using it to go forward right now. I'd go back and live some of those better times when life was simpler, and it wasn't perfect, but we certainly didn't have the problems that we're seeing today. Everything is decaying, and I'll give you one more example of the social decay that I've seen lately. Margaret and I ride our bikes, and we love to ride in the desert out here. It's beautiful, and we went by this what's called the Friendship Circle the other day. And when we went there, it used to be a beautiful circle of flowers and everything, especially this time of year. It was so beautiful. It's rocks now. And so what happened? Why did this thing that's always been so beautiful turn to rocks? And they don't have the money to do this stuff anymore. Beautiful fountains that we used to have out here in the desert with water flowing and stuff. They've had to close them down because the homeless people were bathing in them. They filled them in with rocks. Look around. You'll see the decay. It might, my thought is every time I see something happening in the world, Robin, I think about, is this due to broken money? Is this due to fiat currency? And 99% of the time, I can point that right back to being caused from fiat currency. And it's so sad. We have to change. We have to change this. We have to fix this because they can keep printing money. They can keep raising taxes on us. And that's what they're doing. But it's just making things worse over time because the underlying cause is not being addressed. And that is our money is broken. And they don't want to give that money printer up, Robin. But we have to keep hope. And Bitcoin is that hope that we can fix this.
That's amazing. I think the only use case currently for fiat denomination is to make the case for no coiners to invest in Bitcoin. Like the marketing department of Bitcoin basically is the fiat price. And I think Cybersecurity the Moose talks about that the fiat price is the best marketing tool for Bitcoin, and this brings the most people in. You see it in the numbers. I mean, now with all the things I'm doing in Bitcoin, I see exchange numbers, I see numbers from my own business, from Microseed and all those things. I just see when the price is ripping, new people are coming in. It's just like very clear on data. That's the only use case, but I hope we can go away from that at some point.
Well, I think that, again, money flows where it's treated best. And over time, Bitcoin gives people education. It certainly gives you financial education. It's sure added to my financial education, learning about hard money. We never really had money like this before. Yeah, we had gold, we had silver that seemed to keep up with inflation. And it's had a great move lately. I personally think it's probably topping out soon, or if not soon, it will likely top out. In the near future. But I think the top's probably already in for silver, for instance, but we'll see. Again, I think that it's important if they're going to look at this, and I don't really like to even look at Bitcoin as an investment, Robin. I like to look at real estate. I like to look at stocks as more of an investment. What I like to look at Bitcoin is it's just another alternative and a better alternative to save in right now. And so I know for a fact it works. I going on 9 years now. I know for a fact it works better than anything that I've ever exchanged my dollars for. I used to exchange my dollars for baseball cards and all kinds of stuff when I was a young guy. None of that really seemed to pan out too well for me. And I've exchanged my money for a lot of things in my life, trying to get the upper hand on growing my wealth. Bitcoin has definitely been the best decision I ever made for growing my wealth, just exchanging dollars for Bitcoin. And I just like to view it as I'm just exchanging it for this broken technology for a better technology to save in. And that's exactly what it's done for me. And I think that anybody who takes a similar approach and just starts saving in it could likely have the same outcome, will likely have the same outcome, as long as they learn about it and don't panic sell and do the opposite. And they do the opposite of their emotions, right? When it's going down, oh my gosh, I'm upside down by $1,000 in my Bitcoin. I need to sell this. It's going to zero, or it's going to. Just do your homework. Did anything change? No, nothing changed. So the blockchain didn't get hacked. There's, and who cares if China bans it again? It doesn't really matter. You can't stop this. It's, you can only ban yourself from it. Trying to ban Bitcoin's like trying to ban air. Well, good luck with that. So that's my thoughts on it, Robin.
Yeah, I think if you would have invested every time China tried to ban Bitcoin, you would have been very successful now. I think this started in 2013 with the first kind of tries to do that, and they have done in 2021 again, and in multiple instances. And if you would have just invested all your money every time China tries to ban Bitcoin, you would have done very good. And I mean, even outside of that, even if you would have China banning a technology is a buy signal, because they banned also Facebook and so many, and Google and so many other technology stocks from their businesses there. If you would have invested in all of those, you would have done very good the past 20, 30 years as a small kind of, I don't know if it brings any value, but I think it's an interesting observation. If you invest in things that China wants to ban, you're doing pretty good.
And you have to ask yourself a question: why are they trying to ban it, right? I mean, well, obviously they feel it's a threat to their money printer, right? Let's just call it for what it is. And there were the people getting in today into this are lucky in a way, Robin. Gosh, they don't have to go through so much that the early people did in Bitcoin. And it was sometimes I felt like I was going outside and I was getting beat up walking around with a Bitcoin shirt on. I mean, the pessimism out there was incredible. And people just look at you like, I actually had people laugh at me before. They're talking under their breath, and I knew they were laughing at my Bitcoin shirt, and it's like, it's okay. I've been laughed at before, and I've certainly made mistakes before. Maybe some things that deserve to get laughed at in my life, but fortunately, Bitcoin isn't one of those things. I got this one right, and there's no getting me off of this train. There's no like Lynn Alden says, there's no stopping this train, and she's talking about the money printer, right? And in my opinion, there's no stopping the Bitcoin train either. This thing, you can't stop this. And I think that's probably when I first got so excited, is when I realized that they can't stop this. This is freedom. They cannot stop this technology. They could ban it like China did in countries, and the threat the US was going to ban it, and everybody's saying they're going to ban this technology. That's why I'm not investing in it and all this. Well, guess what? I wasn't worried about it. I knew that game theory was going to kick in. And for those countries that want to ban themselves from it, they're going to fall further behind. I am worried about the European Union right now. They seem to be a little behind the curve, but they'll come to the party a little harder, I think. What about your country, Austria? Are you seeing any progress there?
It is interesting because there is a lot happening, but it's not as visible. And there's also my layer, there's my personal layer or my personal bubble that I have around me. And so when I look around me, everyone is talking about Bitcoin, but it's because of me. So it's it's not really that I see it. And so most of my friends, I have very little friends that are not into Bitcoin at all at this point. And also when I go out and meet people, it's a very Bitcoiner crowd already. So I have to be careful because I have my Bitcoin classes on and my environment is very Bitcoinish. But if you look at, for example, the political layer, for me, it's always interesting. Does the political layer talk about Bitcoin? Because if they talk about it, it shows that there's enough presence in the environment, in in the citizenships that they have to talk about it, which happened with Donald Trump. Even Kamala Harris and Joe Biden had to talk about it, and had in the end of the election cycle, they had to change their stance to a pro Bitcoin stance, because they were like, yeah, like we cannot be against those that group of people, because it's just like too many, and we will lose the vote to them. And so I look at that and I see that almost nobody in the political realm is talking about it. No party is a clear Bitcoin party, and we have 5 different parties. So there would be definitely a room for a party to be a Bitcoin, or like more Bitcoin focused party. And even if you look at all the different parliament members of the parties, there are 1, 2 that have some interesting, good opinions on Bitcoin, but it's like 1, 2 out of like 200. Like I don't even know how many parliament members our parliament has, but I think like 100 to 200, something like that. And even those are not that interesting or that good. And I'm not even talking about they have a positive Bitcoin opinion. I'm just talking about like, do they have an educated, interesting, they have looked deeper opinion on Bitcoin? So I would say it's still quite sad, unfortunately. But the grassroots is really good. If you look at Germany, for example, there are there's a lot of people that have the nodes running in Germany, the full nodes. Germany is one of the biggest full node operators in the whole of the world, even though Germany is not that big. And I think self-custody is also a really, really huge thing in Germany, and in the area that I'm also in Austria. And so those things give me hope, where people really want to protect themselves and really want to be not only into Bitcoin, but also as sovereign as possible. But in general, it's just, it needs more time. We are not as far as the States, I think. And also the grassroots, like how they call the meetups, are not as big as in the comparative cities that are in the United States. For example, Texas, Austin, they are huge meetups there. We cannot compete with those meetups yet.
Well, we had the luxury of going to Germany as well last summer, so it was my first time to Germany, and wow, very, very clean streets there, Robin. Wow, they've solved that problem, with trash being on the streets. That's a very clean country. Austria also very clean. We need to solve that here. Unfortunately, I'm saddened by things that are happening here in the U.S. And when I travel abroad, I see that a lot of countries are in a lot of ways in better shape than the United States now, and it saddens me. We need to get back doing positive things here, and I think, unfortunately, until we fix the money, that's not likely to happen. And I'm just praying that changes soon, because we've all got family, and we want to see a better future for everybody.
Yeah, and I think there's such a I really like living in Europe, and I say that, I think I don't say this often enough on the podcast. Whenever I travel in the world out there, and I go to Abu Dhabi, I go to Miami, I go to America, I go to all those different places, and I'm like, it's such a nice place, Austria and Europe. It's so clean. The infrastructure is so good. The water is amazing. I cannot drink water anywhere else. Like, the water is disgusting out of the tap. We're usually around the world, outside of like Austria and Switzerland and some countries. And the quality of food also you get in the supermarket. The quality of food you get in general, like in hotels and stuff like that. Like, I'm really, like, there's those things that I really love about Austria, but then the political layer, and then the environmental, like the economy friendliness of Austria, and all of, like, there are a lot of things that we have to improve, and I hope we don't end up as a socialist country, because then all the standards will, I think, long term evaporate, and I hope we find the right direction in Austria and Europe. I don't know if it will happen. It's just positive thinking from my side until now.
Wonderful. Well, good luck to you and European Union out there. I think they'll get it together, and they'll be coming to the Bitcoin party. They'll they're going to have to. I see signs of it out there. It just isn't as for a while there it was growing really quickly, and it seems to have slowed a little bit. But I'm not getting deterred from that. That's just how technology works.
I want to ask you one more thing before we come to the end routine of the podcast. How do you look at treasury companies? This as like the last time we were on, I think we haven't talked about them at all, and it has been kind of like the treasury company year last year, the huge upswing and then the huge downswing that they had. How do you look at them?
Well, again, I mean, I do invest in a treasury company, and that's Strategy, and that's the only one I plan on investing in. Obviously, Bitcoin's gone, compared to the dollar's gone down, and so Strategy, being a proxy, has gone down even further. But again, I mean that in my opinion, if you want to invest in a treasury company, it's definitely closer to the bottom than it is the top. So I think that even if Bitcoin drops more, yeah, you're going to have these companies like Strategy, their share values dropping. But at the end of the day, if you're in this for the long term and you want some exposure to Bitcoin without actually holding the underlying asset, I think a Bitcoin treasury company like Strategy is not a bad play. I wouldn't invest personally into any other company right now. I like diversification, but not too much. So I've got Strategy. And I've been adding to my position a little bit over time as the price of Bitcoin is corrected. But I'm not going to be, adding a bunch of treasury companies, just like I'm not going to be buying a bunch of altcoins. So I think they're going to do fine. I think Strategy will do great. I think they'll turn around, and I think it'll be hitting all new time highs, just right there running with Bitcoin, but even probably a little bit faster, a little harder. So, if you want some exposure to that, it gives you some different options, right? Having a stock than actually holding the underlying asset right now. It gives you some different options. If you want to margin and stuff like that with it, you can. But I don't study these companies too much, Robin. I pay attention to Strategy, what they're doing. I mean, he's obviously the king. I don't think anybody's ever going to own any more Bitcoin than he does, his company. And I think he could end up turning out to be, perhaps even the richest man on the planet one day. If Bitcoin goes where we think it's going to go, it could be enormous. It could be a great appreciation in their price if Bitcoin goes to the stratosphere like it's likely to do.
I like that approach. It's also my approach. I only have Strategy, and I want to look into other ones, but I don't think I will invest in them. Maybe, but I said the same thing about Strategy a year ago. So, and here we go. I invested in Strategy. But yeah,
I think you're sorry to cut you off there. I think you're going to see more companies doing it. It makes more sense to hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet than it does, fiat currency decaying. I just absolutely think that it's going to be it's a growing trend as we see more and more companies are adding it to their balance sheets, which is creating more demand over time. And this asset is only getting harder over time. It's like concrete, right? You pour it and it's soft at first, but over time it gets harder, and it takes like 100 years to reach its full strength or something like that. And Bitcoin, it isn't going to produce the last coin to the year 2140. So we've got a long way to go with this.
100%, man. The time jumped very quickly. I already see it, above our time already. We have an end routine, as you might know from the two previous ones, where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest is. And there's a fun and a short question. What was the last price you paid for Bitcoin?
60. I mean, I don't have the exact price, but it was about 66,000. I think. I think I picked some up right around 60. Yeah, 66. I might have been somewhere around there, Robin. 65, 66. But I buy every week, so it just automatically goes off. I don't typically, look at every purchase. But sometimes I go in and smash buy, like I have been doing lately. When there's, when I've got some extra dollar I need to get rid of, I go in and buy, and I buy the dips. I mean, it's not that hard to do. You can spot the dips.
And I every time I get euros or dollars, whatever fiat currency, I really get almost a very rash in me and really want to quickly convert it to Bitcoin. It's now so in me that whenever I get something, I stop what I'm doing. I'm like, oh, I'm eating. I'm like, I have to quickly go there, like convert it, and then I can go back to my business. It's so in me now. I don't have any strategy. I just buy whenever I have dollars or euros, and it paid off. It's kind of DCA because it comes in regular things. So, but it's really fun now. Like my whole system is so trained now. Like euros, Bitcoin. it's so quick.
Well, thank you, Robin, again for this opportunity, and for all the people that have enjoyed my few podcasts. I really appreciate it. Both of us are here just trying to do what we can do to make the world a better place, and that's not a bad thing. So thanks to you, thanks to your viewers. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and thank you so much also for bringing us the joy of life and the joy of Bitcoin to the podcast. Before I let you go, where can people find you and maybe reach out to you if they want so?
Well, I'm not much of a social person that much. I guess I'm becoming one a little bit more, but I like my privacy. I don't give out my last name, but I'm on X under John Q Lunchbucket. I know it's kind of a funny name, John Q Lunchbucket. That's where people could reach out to me if they want, or I guess follow me or whatever. I'm just there, and I use that tool as a tool to learn a lot and plug into some very smart people, and so that's where they could find me.
Awesome. Then thank you so much, Jim, for being on the podcast, and also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.